Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. We've got merch. That's right. Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood t-shirts are officially here, and they're as comfy as they are conversation starting. Grab yours at the link in our show notes. All right, Tony, we've got a good topic today. Book publishing. I love this topic.
Yeah, this is a fun one. How's your morning going?
My morning is good. I'm feeling a little sleepy today. It's a Monday morning when we're recording. And I didn't do anything particularly wild this weekend, but I'm just feeling like I need some extra coffee. How about you?
Man, I'm tired too. We had two kind of late nights. Do you know what the Savannah Bananas are?
Yes.
So we went down and saw them down in Seattle. And I actually have already written and posted a blog post about it. This is going to be a few weeks later when this airs. It was the best. So entertaining. You didn't want to leave your seat. It's just like his dance party, and that there happens to be a baseball game going on, the thing.
And those are like hard tickets to get, right? Because it's a lottery system.
Yeah, my friends were in the lottery and they didn't get it. And then like on Tuesday, they got notice that they could get some tickets and they ended up with some extra ones. So we got to get it. So it was super fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Our friends here who live here in Bellingham, where Tony and I live, they were in, I guess, like multiple people in their family were entering to be in the lottery, however you say it. And so they ended up getting tickets in San Diego. So they flew the whole family there to go, which I thought was cool.
In my opinion, it's totally worth it. I plan on definitely go. I want to go to Savannah and see them. Yeah. So anyways, I'm a little tired. We had a couple back-to-back later nights, but that's okay. That's what the work week's for, is to recover.
That's right. Yeah, that's when I recover from all the fun. Rather be tired during the work week than during the fun weekend. Okay. So we're going to talk about book publishing today because we definitely get a lot of questions about this. Both Tony and I are published authors and have gone about it in different ways, so we can speak to our experiences. I also have worked in traditional publishing for many years on the publicity side, so I understand how all of the publishing houses work and can speak to that too. So I think we should just start by like breaking down the three options for publishing in case people are confused. I definitely get lots of folks who come to me a little confused because they think there's only one way to publish, which is to pitch your work to a publisher and they pay you and then poof, your book arrives in the world. Unfortunately, that's not really how it works, but that's the general understanding.
And admittedly, I was one of those people that were confused about the process and went to Melissa. So.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Like, it's understandable. That would be like, that is the general piece of knowledge that everyone has. So I completely get it. But we're going to break that down for you today. So the first way that you can publish a book is going through what we call traditional publishing, which means that you work with a publishing house. So an example would be like Random House or HarperCollins, and there's what's called the Big Five publishing houses, and then they have different imprints. So anyway, we won't go into those weeds, but the point is that you pitch your manuscript to them. If they like it, or you do it through an agent, rather, you generally can't go directly to them. You have to have a literary agent who is pitching on your behalf. And then if they decide that they're interested in your book, they will pay you some kind of advance. I can't tell you what that advance will be because it's a huge span of numbers. So traditionally, it's maybe starts around like $5,000 to $10,000, and that can go up to $100,000 or more, depending. But I think the statistic right now is most generally advances fall somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 range for a book. But again, that can be all over the map. That includes that they will take care of the editing of the book, the cover design of the book, the printing of the book, and the distribution of the book. Sometimes they help a little with marketing, but we'll get into that later. that is generally not always the case. So you never want to rely, I will say it just as a rule of thumb for anyone who is traditionally publishing, you never want to rely on your publisher to do the marketing for you. You always want to take that on yourself. And if they help, if they do help in certain ways, great. But you really want to take that into your own hands, which means that you are going to incur expense on that end. That is what traditional publishing is. Then there's hybrid publishing, which is a bit of a middle ground. It means that you work with a publisher. So there are people that have hybrid publishing businesses. So they operate as an imprint. And what it means by hybrid is that you will invest some money yourself as an author, paying this company to handle what I would call really like the project management of your book. So they will, that fee that you pay to them, they will use that for your cover, for your editing. They will use that for distribution as well. So distribution means getting it out to bookstores, by the way, and getting out to libraries. And then the rest of that will fall on you, but it is a nice option for folks. And Tony, you can speak about this once we're past the definitions, because he did hybrid publishing. It's a good option for folks who are like, I don't want to learn about how to publish a book myself. I would like to just hand this over to somebody to do it for me. And it's a great option for that. And also it's a great option for distribution purposes, because that is probably the toughest thing that you'll face as an author if you decide to publish yourself. And then the final option for you is self-publishing. So this means that you handle everything yourself, or you are hiring freelancers. So you are project managing your own book. So that means that you handle the editing or hire an editor, you handle the cover design or hire a cover designer, the formatting, the marketing, and the distribution, etc. The nice thing about this is the option that I go with, because I am a person who loves business and marketing. So I was very excited to dive into this whole process. And my favorite part about it is that you retain full creative control of your book. And you also get to keep 70% of the royalties, versus if you go the traditional route, you keep about 30. Actually, I think 30 might be a little generous. Sometimes it's less than. So that's a big difference when it comes to royalties. And then hybrid can sometimes mean you keep all the royalties yourself, or sometimes you have an arrangement with your hybrid publisher where maybe there is a royalty split. So anyway, that is the breakdown of all of the options.
Yeah, so I did the hybrid, and when I met with Melissa, she goes, "Oh, Tony, it's easy. You just get your ISBN number and you publish it, and you get someone to help you with the cover and blah, blah." And I was like watching her Instagram, and it's like a trailer for a movie when she's doing a book release. And I'm like, this is beyond me. And I had a friend and so I talked to a lot of people. I talked to a local bookstore that does it, which would have been a good option. Frankly, they're successful at it, and they were booking out a long ways. And that one was even more. It was like, they gave me some names of editors and cover designers and stuff, but I still had to project manage it all. And I called those people and started adding up the costs. And then I talked to some other of these kind of hybrid publishers and ended on this Skinny Brown Dog Media, which is where my friend had published his book. And he kind of has everything under one roof, which made it helpful. And he was very good at hand holding. And I don't want to call myself difficult, but maybe not super easy to deal with, just as far as I don't necessarily follow the rules and this and that. He actually sent me this whole thing of edits, and I just said, I'm not capable of doing all that rewriting. And so anyways, it was one of those things and so with him, there is no split. I paid him a fee. I own 100% rights. I get all the royalties. I will say though that being an author, and Melissa is a successful author. I'm someone that published a book, so I get to call myself an author. But the number of sales is dramatically different. But it really is your PR and your marketing and all of that is so much. The writing of the pages for me was the easiest part. It's all the other pieces is far more challenging than producing the words. And then that includes for me the editing. Those things were harder for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good place to start, I think, is like with the investment of the book, right? and energetically where you're spending, I guess, where you're spending your energy. So it's not just money, it's energy. I think that's a big piece of the pie here as well is I think, lots of folks feel like maybe, for example, traditional publishing is the way to go because I don't want to do any of this stuff. I want some publisher to take it all on. But one thing, and again, this is not a negative, this is just something to be aware of, is that to even get to that route, you have to expend a lot of energy and sometimes money. So, in order to even acquire a literary agent who can pitch you to these publishers is a long journey. There's a lot of competition. You generally need to submit a book manuscript to this literary agent that is very polished, which means you're not just drafting up something on your own and sending it off. You are still on the hook to hire an editor, at least one editor, because there are 3 levels of editing, which we can go through as well, to make sure that it's in tip-top shape, to even have a literary agent that's willing to consider that. So if you are considering the traditional publishing route, you have to realize you want your book to be almost in shape to print, right, at that point. And that does take a lot of energy and a lot of money. And then once you get it in the hands of a literary agent, the next step that happens is they're going to want you to do a giant rewrite before they even take it out on what they call sub, which means that they take it out to start pitching to the publishing houses. So it's never going to be in shape for that agent. Of course, they're going to have their opinions. They're going to want to change things. In screenwriting, we call it you serve one master at a time. So if every time it's in somebody new's hands, they're going to have notes for you that you better incorporate or that's not getting made. So once you get it in the hands of an agent that's interested, at that point, they're going to want you to do another rewrite. And sometimes that's minimal, but most of the time it's a pretty giant chunk. So it's like what you were handed back, Tony, from your publisher. And they said, we want you to make all these changes. In this case, you've got to make it. You can't turn around and say, nah, I don't really want to make it. Just go ahead and do this for me.
Yeah. And I think part of it for which route people are choosing is what is their why for the writing the book. A Wandering Mind, when I wrote that, I wanted it was stories from my life with lessons, and there's some other pieces in that. And I wanted it to be, if my daughter's reading this book, I want her to know that it was my words. This is how I write. The introduction talks a lot about how it was challenging for me to English and writing and reading. All of those things were really hard for me. And so I wanted people to read how I write. And yes, we edited and then there's still errors even after that. It's quite the process. I actually just resubmitted my manuscript with some edits, and some of it were like printing things and whatever. But I think the reason why, right? If you're trying to live off of this, if you want to publish this for your family, a lot of people publish books because they want to get speaking gigs. What is your reason for doing it? And I think that does help direct people on maybe the way they go. One thing that, I know a little bit about, but I think not that much that I'd like you to expand on is your whole avenue, because you're self-published and you've alluded to this multiple times on the podcast, but you not only write books as Melissa Casera, you have a pen name that you're publishing books at, and you have this whole strategy around writing and publishing to create a flow off of this.
Yes. So I do that generally through my pen name is a little bit more, I'd say, strategic, frankly, than the books I publish under my own name. The books I publish under my own name did very well, but my pen name books do even better because it's a niche that has less competition. That's why. But in both instances, I focus mainly on digital, so ebooks versus print books. That's not to say I don't sell print, I do, but the margins are very tight on print books, whereas on ebooks, the margins are greater. Also, you just have a more expansive audience, and I use what's called the KDP program, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, and Amazon does a lot of marketing for you. So that is one big benefit. If you learn the platform, the Kindle platform, and you learn how to market and promote your books on it, which can be ad driven and cannot be ad driven. Under my pen name, I don't do any ads. I spend very little money on my pen name books. I don't do any paid advertising, which is pretty shocking because generally you need that for a lot of genres. But I figured out a way that I don't need it, or at least right now I don't. I can always incorporate that later. But using the Kindle platform, you access a lot of readers, like a wide span of readers. You get a big fan base there because you're paid differently. So people will pay if you're somebody who has a Kindle membership, you probably paid I think it's $9.99 a month, and you can read all the books that are in Kindle. Like you can read thousands of books a month if you want. So I participate in that program, which means that I get paid by page reads versus getting paid by individual purchases of the book. Obviously, if you're not in the Kindle, if you don't pay $9.99 a month for Kindle Unlimited, then you're going to pay me for the book itself, right? That's a separate cost. And certainly people do. But to be in the Kindle Unlimited program, that's where I get paid by page reads. So I'm sure for those listening, it's like you can already see the strategy is a little different there. Then it's okay, if I'm getting paid by page reads, then the most important thing is to get people to read through your entire book and to keep reading. So you want to think about series models, right? And like books hooking to each other. If you're somebody that's just putting out a single book, like Tony, right? He has a book of personal stories. It doesn't have a cliffhanger at the end, right? It's just a book that exists on its own. And that's not to say that he won't write more. That's not to say that he doesn't want you to read all of his books one day when he has more than one book. But he would not be a good candidate for Kindle Unlimited for this reason. He's a better candidate to go, what I would say, with the hybrid publishing model, because his book is also like a gift book. So something that like I'd say works really well in like independent bookstores or gift boutiques where people can come in and they want something that they can give, a nice coffee table book maybe for themselves or somebody, something you read on vacation, right? Your book has all those qualities. So because of that, I think your book is primed for print. And so you would want to have some distribution with it. So hybrid is the way to go for that.
Yeah, I know that everybody judges a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And I definitely thought about that when I did the cover of my book. And it's true. I sell a few through Amazon. I'm on all the different online platforms, Barnes and Noble and whatever. But the vast majority of my sales have been at independent bookstores than I am in some other, that store you walk in, they just like all the things. They a lot like outdoor post,
Like general stores, I think.
and and my book has sold well there, but it's really interesting. Ingram Sparks. So Ingram is, I don't know, I think they're the biggest book printer in the United States, which might make them the biggest book printer in the world. And so my book is there, and that's where most of these independent bookstores order books from. It's from Ingram. And the margin that the bookseller gets, they want to get at least 50% margin, right? So if the book's $10, they buy it for $5, they sell it for 10, they make 50%. Even if I have my settings set that they get that, they don't necessarily give that. So my hardback, they were getting those margins. On my paperback, for whatever reason, Ingram has not been doing those margins. They wanted to charge the bookseller more for it. So I can reduce my rate down to adjust for that. Or what I've been doing with the books, with the independent bookstores, doing consignment. So I buy the book, I get a box of books, shows up at my house, and then I go and bring them to the local bookstores. And so in that, I get 60%, they get 40%, although I've already paid for the book though. It's not a get rich quick scheme, but it's been a trickle, and it's been a drip and maybe turned into a trickle some months. And then they pay me quarterly, is how those independent bookstores do it. One of the nice things about it, and the independent bookstores like this a lot, is that then I can, since I'm getting the copies, I can sign them, and having signed copies in the store is a cool thing. So it's really interesting. But what I have learned is being an author is a challenging way to make money, and being independent bookstore is a challenging way to make So
Yeah.
I've really become, and I think it'd be fun to bring on a bookstore owner at some point and just hear about that world, because it's a daunting task, and they only have so much shelf space. And so to earn some of that shelf space is tricky. And if your book doesn't sell, generally they'll
Mhm.
keep it for 90 days or something. And if you're not selling through, they say, okay, come get your books.
Yeah, it is tough. And I feel for the independent bookstores because I think ultimately they really like to support independent author. They don't want to just purchase the books that like are at every Barnes and Noble, every Target. Like that's what they exist for. But then you run into the problem of all the publishing money. So the money that the publishing houses are usually pooling out or on a select few books. So then those are the books that like the general public wants to buy because it's just what they're hearing about. They're seeing them all the time in ads, etc. So they're forced to then carry them because that's what's going to sell. That's what
Yeah.
keeps the
And
lights on. It's tough.
yeah, they have to have the best sellers in there. And
It's tough for them. I don't envy independent bookstores. I love that they exist, but that is a tough business. I'll add that in the books that are under my own name, so not my pen name books, I had a really good run of selling paperbacks of those on my own. So it's what we call as self-published authors just direct selling, which just means that I'm on Ingram. Everyone who publishes is on Ingram. So that's where everybody orders the books. That's just the fulfillment house. And so if I'm selling a paperback there, whatever margin is super, super slim. But what I would do is I would just bulk order a bunch of books myself. And then I would figure out like how to make a package that's exciting for people that I could increase the price because that there is more value in it. So what I did with those books, because they had beautiful covers, I did invest in my covers as well. Like you said, Tony, very important. And wanted to make sure that those were like shelf candy so that people actually wanted to display them. And so I sold those as signed copies with like swag. So I had little stickers made and other things like bookmarks. I had all kinds of things. I'm just blanking on what they all were now. But stickers, bookmarks, stuff like that. Pens, I think, oh, buttons. I had cute little buttons made. And so I just direct sold those on Etsy and they did really well. So it then increased my margin from whatever it was originally a couple dollars a book or something to like my margin ballooned to $10 a book because I was able to have this like great signed personalized copy with all this fun little swag that didn't cost me very much to do because I also bulk ordered my swag. So the individual costs of each bookmark was very low, just in the cents. And yeah, so that was one way. A lot of authors do go that route. If you publish yourself, you have the benefit, in my opinion, of doing whatever you want. So you can publish special copies of your book. You can change the cover, right? You can change the entry. You could spray the edges. You can do your own audiobooks, right? And again, that's another avenue to make money. If you work with a traditional publisher, and again, this is not being negative about traditional publishing, but just so that like you don't have control over those things. So there are certain levers you can pull when you retain 100% rights of your own book. And in order to market and sell more copies and extend the shelf life of that, versus when you're working with a publisher, that is different. Then they control those things. So you're a bit limited as to what you can do as an author. So you become very reliant on like their marketing push of your book, right? And there's just minimal things that you can do on your own. So just something to be aware of. Again, I think it just boils down to what is your goal as an author? What's your why, as Tony said? Do you want to talk about some of our like the expenses, Tony?
Sure. So my expenses, I paid. So I really looked at the options and looked at the different prices. And unless I was gonna do, even if I was gonna do everything myself, I still needed to hire a cover designer. Learned I needed a page layout designer and an editor. And when I did the math on that, it was gonna cost me. It seemed like it was gonna cost me a few $1,000s going with Skinny Brown Dog. And I don't know if he wants me to say. I don't know what his numbers are at currently, so maybe this is adjusted, but I spent a couple $1,000s more than what it would have cost me to do had I been essentially project managing it all myself. I think I needed that hand holding. I don't know that there were some pieces that I ended up taking out. There were some pieces that I did add to, and some things like that that without his feedback probably wouldn't have done. But then you got to buy the books. So if the bookstores don't know who I am, I've got to buy a case of books. I got to go into these independent bookstores, show it. If it sells through Amazon, then they print their own books. So they have my files. They'll print my book. Barnes and Noble prints their own books. But otherwise, I'm buying a book with shipping. I'm getting them a little less than $5 a book. I sell them for $16.99 is all for the paperback. So if I sell it on my own, then I can make about $12. If I'm selling it consignment, let's see, I get about $5. That doesn't take into account that I've got to deliver these books and those sorts of things. Actually, the bookstore that has sold the most of my books is about 45 minutes away. Driving there to sell books is not super efficient. Fortunately, my brother's girlfriend just moved there. And so I've been
Oh,
sending books with my brother to the bookstore, which has been great. So those are the numbers. It's in hardbacks cost more. I also have case laminate books. I actually personally like my version the best in case laminate. So those are my numbers, but you can spend way more. You can hire someone to write your whole book for you.
oh
You
yeah.
can pay someone more for kind of that hybrid model, or you can do it on your own. And I'm sure you can find a hybrid model that is less expensive also.
Yeah, that's good. I would say that's about average of what to expect to spend. Though it's again can be all over the map as to what some people do every single thing themselves. So they don't really pay a dime, or maybe they're just paying for Canva to do their book cover.
Yeah.
But I know authors that do every single thing on their own. So they're not paying anything. For the books that I published under my name, I I would say my most heavy investment was in the cover and the editing for sure, because I wanted my covers to be really beautiful. I knew in that genre, so I'm in the paranormal romance YA genre for those, which means that like if you look at the other books that are on the shelf or on Amazon in the top, they're very pretty. Like the covers are very pretty. So you just have to look at your competition, right? And so I knew that was going to be an expense. I think at the time they may not be this cost anymore. They may have gone up, probably have. I think at the time I paid about 800 per cover, which I don't even think is that bad.
No, I think that's a good deal.
It was a good deal
Yeah.
for what, again, they might be more expensive now, this designer, but at the time that was what I paid. Editing, I definitely paid. I had 3 levels of edits for each book. So developmental, which meant my developmental editor, the way that we worked together was I would submit chapters, usually 2 to 4 at a time, and she would give me really broad notes, right? No, this sucks. This doesn't track, right? Like just bigger, broad, like major story problems, plot holes, character issues. So from that very high level, that's their job. Then after that, when we worked together chapter by chapter, and then also she did reads of the entire thing. So I think she did a big read about halfway through and then a full read at the end. And so once all that was dusted up, and I think that was probably about I want to say 2,500 to 3,000, somewhere in that range. I think that was about what that cost. But again, that's a very deep, intense process. Many authors skip that process when they're like publishing themselves. I wanted to do it. Then the next level is line editing, which means somebody goes line by line and points out all of the problems, but it's more granular, right? It's not big story comments. It's the story's set, the characters are set, the plot is what it is. But here's line by line what your problems are. So that could be like grammatical edits, but a lot of times it's like my line editor is freaking amazing. She'll put together like a whole Bible that's here's all the details of the world, the characters. It's like an encyclopedia about your book. And that is so important especially if you're writing fiction, and especially if you have a series. So it was very helpful. And then she would point out, like, she'd be like, they had a blue shirt here and then not here, right? Like stuff that, like, it's so granular. And that's, she's trained, right? Her brain works that way. My brain doesn't work that way. Or this is a little funny kind of, we'll keep it PG-13 for this. But if you have any romantic scenes, right? Let's just even say, like, somebody, there's a makeout scene, right? The one thing, and authors will feel me on this who write romance, it is very hard to keep track of limbs. Like just of where a hand is, like where they're moving, how they're making out. Like it's very funny. So I can't tell you how many times like I've screwed that up where it was like here, his hand was here, like on her neck, but then suddenly his hand is somewhere else. And so I'm like, so just keeping track of all those limbs is very difficult. I know that sounds probably not very romantic, but that's true. It's very clinical when you write romance. You're just trying to keep track of limbs. So your line editor helps with that as well as many other things. And then the final stage is a proofreader. So your line editor is usually, depending on how long your book is, I'd say you might pay them like maybe $1,000, somewhere around that range. It could be more, could be less, but I think that's like generally where it falls. And then a final proofread is at this point, your book should be ready to go. There's just a couple little things that can be dusted up, like a missing period here, a misplaced quote mark or something. So very basic. So that it's just somebody to read through with fresh eyes. In my opinion, I had the best luck using 3 different people for those 3 edits. So somebody to do each stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice because by the time we got ready to push print, all of us that have been working on it, I feel like you get that tunnel vision where you read it and you've already read it. You don't even see the mistakes. I had some very simple, and a lot of people have copies of it, some pretty simple typos. There was some like formatting things that like just in one chapter, like it was like in the same words were printed. They were like smushed together. There's just like some random things. I had the wrong herd in there at one point. Just like little stuff that like you should catch, but I wasn't even probably reading the full sentences anymore at that point. I knew what it said. And my editor they were probably sick of me if I'm being honest. And I actually just went through and my mom, she had mentioned some of these errors to me, and my high school English teacher had mentioned some of these.
Yep.
And so my mom just went through, and very nice of her to give me this list of all essentially punctuation, grammar stuff, just typos. And so I just uploaded the new manuscript. Actually, Eric did, but now apparently it's all on me, handed off ownership to me over there. So that's a lot of responsibility. I know, I'm a little nervous.
You'll be okay.
So anyways, okay, people are probably might be getting tired of listening to us talk about this. What's your one piece of advice if someone wants to write a book?
Oh, geez. So pick something that you can live with for a very long time. Because no matter which route you're going to go, traditional, hybrid, or self, you are going to be living with this baby for a long time through a lot of edits. This is not easy. Writing a book is not easy. I have the same rule when it comes to scripts as well, because it takes generally like from starting an idea of a script to like actually getting it made, and not everything will get made, but if it does, it's about a 7-year timeline. So I usually now it's less for books. It's much less for books, but I would say maybe rule of thumb, say, can I live with this project for 3 years? Is that really going to be something that I want to just energetically live with? And that can sometimes make a decision of, do I want to do this or not? Because you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. And also even just the topic of the book can come into play, right? Is this even a topic you want to write about? Or is it just a random idea that sounds cool, but ultimately you're going to be tired of in 6 months?
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I remember I thought that I'm like, oh, I already wrote this thing. I'm going to send it off and this thing will be published in 2 months. And boy, was I wrong.
More than you think.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that come up to me like, oh, I saw you writing. Most people see like an article or something, but more also people are seeing the book and they go, oh, I write. Always nervous. I always just say, if you really have something to write it down, if you then want to take that next step to publish it, And they go, well, I don't know if anybody want to read it. If you're going to try to live off of this, then you want people to read it. You've got to really be treating this like a business and a profession. If you just want to publish this book because maybe you want your family to read it or friends but I think you'll find an audience. And if everybody's not your audience, it's kind of who cares, right? They got other stuff they can read. So I would just encourage people to just start writing and see where it goes.
Yeah, everybody should not be your audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such an important point for anyone because I think that stops people is, but what if I get a bad review? You will, and you should get a bad review because if you don't have reviews that span from 5 to 1, that means your book isn't in enough hands because it absolutely should. It should be out there in a big way. So you need reviews all over the place. Also, those low reviews sell books because it tells people what those people didn't like. And then that will attract the people who do like those things. Like one of my best, I'm sure I have tons of 1-star reviews, but one of my 1-star reviews on one of my books sells a ton of books for me because somebody thought it was like fan fiction for Justin Bieber. So my book is not, but it must give off that edge somehow. There's an aura of Bieber in my book. And so people will buy it and then they actually feel fulfilled because they're like, this is so angsty and good. And it feels like a Bieber album. I'm like, great. That wasn't my intention. But thank you, 1-star reviewer, for helping me sell so many books. So like, don't worry about like people liking it, not liking it, et cetera, et cetera. All of your reviews from good to bad can actually help you sell. They're a huge marketing tool. So if that's stopping anyone listening to this, oh shoot, I don't want a bad review. Nope. Generally books that are like rated that have reviews all over the board and maybe fall like a 3-star, like a mid, they're selling the best. So if you really want to make money from this, that's actually your aim. Your aim is not to have a bunch of 5 stars because that usually means that your book isn't selling as well as it should.
Yeah. Cool. I think this has been a fun topic to talk about. I am still learning so much about this. Even though I've been doing this now for my book published 11 months ago, and been working on it I feel like I'm still in my infancy when it comes to being an author.
We're going to get your next book and your next book.
Yeah, there's some stuff in the works.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully that anyone who's considering publishing a book, or maybe you're already in your publishing journey, but just wanted some honest chat around these different paths, found some support and guidance in this episode. And if you like this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. We are also on YouTube if you prefer to listen to podcasts there. We are all loaded up there as well. And with that said, we'll see you on the next episode of Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood. Bye, everybody.